The Blue Hole in the Red Sea, nestled in the Sinai Peninsula of Egypt, is a diver's delight and dread, drawing both beginners and pros into its azure depths. Despite being just one of many such enigmatic gorges scattered across the globe, this particular hole stands out for its ominous reputation. It is considered among divers as the single deadliest dive site on the planet, a place where the line between adventure and tragedy is razor thin. I am Omar Tariq, the Gravekeeper of the subjects of the most lethal diving site on the planet. Throughout its history, this underwater abyss has claimed the lives of countless souls, shrouded in a macabre mystery that only adds to its foreboding aura. Official records fail to capture the full extent of its deadly grasp, with estimates of its victims ranging from 130 to well over 200. Though the actual toll still remains veiled by insufficient data, enough is known to designate this sinkhole with the title of Divers Cemetery, with its victims memorialized on plaques embedded in a mountain facade overlooking the perilous dive site. While the air there carries a palpable sense of dread, I've got the nerves to plunge into such treacherous waters, risking all to recover the remains of those who fell victim to it. It's been years into this profession. I've become intimately familiar with the eerie routine. As a professional technical diving instructor, there are moments when I reluctantly don my diving suit, haunted by the imminent encounter with the specters of the deep. Plunging into the depths of the aquatic graveyard, I scan the murky waters with trepidation, following any clues the departed may have left behind, locating the putrefying, dreadful human remains, and that is only half the grim task. The other half is the ascent, facing the lifeless body. Recovering these lost souls is a deeply personal mission. I do it without charge. It's a delicate and challenging undertaking that demands more than just technical diving skills. It requires a depth of experience and fortitude beyond measure. I've lost track of the bodies I've brought up from the seafloor. Perhaps I stopped counting long ago, overwhelmed by the relentless tide of loss. Since the late 90s, I've been part of most, if not all, of the body recovery operations. 2 decades of this morbid job have etched a few names in my memory. Among them, Martin Gara and Connor O'Egian stand out as the first souls I retrieved upon my arrival in the city. I can recall it vividly as if it were yesterday. In 1997, Martin Gara journeyed from Ireland to Egypt to spend a year working as a dive instructor, eager to explore the region's renowned dive sites. Midway through his stay, his friend Connor joined him to complete the year together. Connor, too, was nearing the final stages of his instructor training, making both men experienced and renowned for their cautious and meticulous approach to diving among those who knew them. Even in their early 20s, their passion for diving was so profound that this trip served as a trial run for their future ambitions upon returning to Ireland. Their goal was to explore the region, laying the groundwork for a travel agency specializing in overseas dive tours. Little did they know their aspirations would remain unfulfilled in their tragically short lives. On November 19th, they ventured to the Blue Hole with the global diving organization PADI, accompanied by a group of seasoned divers. However, their tranquil excursion took a sinister turn when they became separated from the group, finding themselves isolated and alone in the depths. As fate would have it, their separation led them to inadvertently descend beyond the limits of their gas mixture, resulting in a loss of consciousness and the expulsion of their regulators. Their lifeless bodies sank into the abyss. It was only upon resurfacing that the other divers noticed their absence, realizing they had not returned as scheduled. Hastening back into the depths, they searched frantically, but their efforts were in vain. By the time their bodies were discovered, it was too late. At a depth of 335 feet, I found them locked in a final embrace. It appears that one must have encountered trouble, descending deeper while the other attempted to help him, but both succumbed to unconsciousness, and their fate was sealed by the unforgiving depths of the Blue Hole. One might be tempted to steer clear of such a deadly spot. The truth is quite the opposite. The Blue Hole's notorious danger only adds to its deep sea allure, attracting divers with its eerie beauty and sinister charm. The exact reasons for its danger remain unclear, but the hole's unique shape, narrowing like a funnel with a deep arch and tunnel leading to the open ocean, likely plays a part in its risks. Divers have recounted seeing a light at the end of the tunnel and thinking it was the surface, swimming down towards it. Additionally, the rapid depth changes and the potential for nitrogen narcosis make it easy for divers to dive too deep, leading to intoxication, accidents, and fatalities. Nitrogen narcosis is a condition where divers are subjected to breathing gases at high pressure, causing mental and sometimes physical impairment. It's a bit like the martini effect, where the deeper you go, the more tipsy you feel, similar to having one too many drinks. And when you add oxygen poisoning to the mix, where the gas becomes toxic under high pressure, Anyone continuing to breathe at such depths is truly on borrowed time. These effects can be mitigated with specialized equipment. While technical divers often explore beneath the arch, it's an expensive pursuit that demands extensive training, and people are unwilling to invest the time and effort required. An even graver mistake would be to simply venture alone. This was the case with one of the most famous incidents at the Blue Hole, another case that remains deeply ingrained in my memory. 3 years had passed since my first recovery. In April 2000, a man named Yuri Lipsky arrived in Dahab, eager to explore the diving spots in the area. The Russian-Israeli scuba diving instructor had brought all his filming equipment, unaware that he would soon be documenting his own demise with it. For years, it had been Yuri's dream to explore the Blue Hole. His father had cautioned him against recklessness, but determined to fulfill his dream safely, Yuri sought a diving companion. That's when our paths crossed. Yuri expressed his excitement about the dive and his desire to film the journey. I agreed, but under the condition that he undergo 2 weeks of training with me first. Unfortunately, Yuri was pressed for time with only a weekend in town. And also overconfident in his abilities, he declined my offer and set off alone, setting the stage for disaster. Within an hour of our meeting, Yuri arrived at the dive site and entered the water, using a regular air cylinder instead of the recommended enriched air nitrox mixture. That was his second blunder. Yuri's dive video commences, capturing him near the water's surface amidst a backdrop of fellow divers, vibrant coral reefs, and darting fish. The azure waters are crystal clear and inviting. Pauses to adjust the camera, briefly glancing down to attach what appears to be a lens cover, perhaps to shield it from the anticipated pressure of the depths. After a few more adjustments, Yuri's attention shifts to 2 divers ahead of him, their regulators emitting a long string of bubbles, rising and dissipating into the water above. While the other divers cautiously kicked to maintain their depth, Yuri, fueled by adrenaline, paddled swiftly past them, plunging deeper and deeper. Soon he was alone, surrounded by nothing but the pitch-black water of the inner wall of the hole. His camera captured his labored breathing as he descended further. By now, Yuri may have realized the gravity of the situation, perhaps recalling my earlier warnings about these treacherous waters. However, it was too late. Events had spiraled beyond his control. The water grows increasingly ominous with each stroke, enveloping Yuri in its dark embrace. As he descends, the effects of nitrogen narcosis intensify, clouding his judgment. Simultaneously, his ability to control his buoyancy diminishes with the mounting pressure. Glancing at his dive computer, Yuri discovers he is at a depth of 265 feet, nearly double the recommended limit for regular air he was using. Struggling to maintain control, he reaches a ledge where he comes to a precarious rest, his actions betraying a growing desperation. In a futile attempt to ascend, Yuri attempts to inflate his buoyancy control device, recorded by the camera as a hiss of air escapes. However, the depth and weight of his equipment thwart his efforts. Frantically, he struggles for a few moments, the gravity of his situation dawning upon him. But it's too late. The camera abruptly cuts off at 7 minutes, while Yuri is still trying to navigate the terrifying depths alone. Approximately 40 agonizing minutes passed before it became painfully clear that Yuri would not resurface. So his parents were notified shortly after, and his father wasted no time in arriving in Dahab the following day. Desperate for closure, his father implored the locals to retrieve Yuri's body from the depths. But it was me who ultimately volunteered to undertake this harrowing task. Descending into the abyss to nearly 300 feet, I eventually located Yuri lifeless and submerged, weighed down by an excess of gear. His attempt to increase buoyancy had backfired tragically, causing his buoyancy control device to rupture from being overfilled. Finally, somehow through sheer will, I managed to retrieve Yuri's lifeless remains, returning all his belongings to his grieving parents. Among these items was his camera, which unbeknownst to me at the time was still operational. Designed for depths of up to 246 feet, I had assumed it had malfunctioned and failed to capture any footage. But tragically, the camera had captured everything, a fact that became painfully evident when its contents were played back for Yuri's parents. Had I known it was still functional, I would have deliberately flooded the camera to spare them the anguish. I've always dismissed the idea of a curse lurking within the Blue Hole. However, after 2 decades of retrieving lifeless bodies from its depths, I've reached a somber conclusion. Those who dare to dive here seem to have woven their own curse. But perhaps that's how nature reminds us of its enigmatic ways.